Welcome. My name is Ellie Troxel, an Xcel Energy Partners and Energy Community Facilitator, and I'll be speaking to you today with my colleague Jamie Johnson, a fellow community facilitator, about using community data for plan development and implementation. As a Partners in Energy community and stakeholder, this video is intended to achieve the four objectives. First, understanding how data is gathered and used in Partners in Energy for your community. Understanding why it is important to gather and use information and data about your community as part of your developing your community energy action plan. Next, becoming familiar with Partners in Energy data and analytics capabilities and process. And finally, preparing you to effectively participate, understand, and analyze your community's energy data. Before we dive into any energy data for a community, it is important to clarify a few details around the energy data that we use in Partners in Energy. In receiving data for your community, we must first clean up the data to ensure compliance with regulations. When aggregating customer data, steps must be taken to ensure that the data remains anonymous as mandated by your respective state or Public Utilities Commission. A Public Utilities Commission is a governing body that regulates the rates and services of a public utility, like Xcel Energy. At a minimum in Colorado, there must be at least 15 customers or premises in a data set, including energy use, energy efficiency program participation, which we will refer to as demand-side management, and renewables program participation. Also, within any customer type, no single premise can comprise more than 15% of the group's energy consumption. You will hear this referred to as the 15 by 15 rule. In Minnesota, 15 by 15 only applies to energy use, while demand-side management and renewables program participation is not subject to the 15 by 15 rule. If a customer like yourself, as a business, resident, or municipality, is interested in sharing your personally identifiable information, we require that you complete a waiver. If you're interested, please request a waiver from your community facilitator. Throughout the planning process, you will hear your community leads say terms like premise, residential sector, or commercial sector as examples. Pay attention to these energy-related terms that are used and how they are used. For example, consider premise versus customer. A customer can have multiple premises. Your city or town is one customer with multiple premises, like a rec center, library, or city hall. Similarly, the geographic location of a premise is not necessarily the same as the billing address. Typically, the premise corresponds to the physical geographic location of the meter, while the billing address reflects the customer paying for the energy used at a given premise. Next, there are two primary customer types, residential and business, that depend on a premise's rate schedule and energy usage. And finally, your community data lead will be available to answer questions about your community's data throughout the Partners in Energy process. Please note that data are unofficial for planning purposes and the results may change slightly. For your community, your data lead and facilitation team will develop an energy profile that will be referred to as your community's energy baseline. The baseline energy data is only representative of Xcel Energy customer data, unless a partnership with a partnering utility is established for the process. Once your data lead has cleaned up the raw data and deemed it compliant with all regulations, your community's energy baseline will identify the following. The most recent and complete 3 years of data, for example, 2016 through 2018. From the data available then, a baseline year will be selected and used as the reference year for goal setting and tracking progress against and during implementation. The baseline year typically chosen is the most recent year of complete data, although sometimes a different year of data is chosen to align with past or ongoing planning efforts, such as a greenhouse gas inventory. The baseline energy data further identifies the amount of energy your community purchases by fuel source, such as electricity and natural gas, pending your community's service area. A breakout by segment, residential, commercial, industrial of your community as well. And an overlay of energy use and historic program participation for each segment. Data provided in planning might alter depending on an approach or track provided through the Partners in Energy process. We will use data to guide us through the planning process and implementation. Specifically, data helps us understand how energy is used in your community, understands historic demand-side management and renewable program participation, and informs goal and target development, conducts scenario planning based on different goals and targets to illustrate their potential impacts, and tracks and reports and compares to the goals and targets outlined in your community's energy action plan when in implementation. Jamie will now share data tips in plan development and implementation.
Thank you, Ellie, for a great Data 101. So as Ellie mentioned, my name is Jamie, and I am a Partners in Energy Community Facilitator. Now that you've seen those basics and the background of the data, I'm going to walk us through some ways of how a community may use their data in the energy action planning process. Along with that, I will highlight some tips that communities have found to lead to success in implementing their energy action plans. Throughout your planning process, you will see utility data about program information and energy use. It's the combination of energy data and the knowledge of you and other members of the energy action team that will drive the energy action plan forward. Throughout the process, your community facilitators will be working to provide data analytics support. This includes sharing background data on your community, as well as modeling out your community's goals and strategies, as Ellie discussed briefly before. The data analytics focus on setting goals and developing strategies that meet those goals by leveraging energy efficiency programs and services currently offered by Xcel Energy and other partner utilities as available. These data analytics are a great way to help refine your energy action plan. So this slide shows the 11 modules of a typical energy action planning process. Throughout your planning process, your community facilitators will show you data in different forms to help inform your planning process. Typically, you start by examining baseline data. From there, your community facilitators can help you to model out forecasts and goals, as well as strategy-related data. Your community's data process may differ from this, and feel free to reach out to your community facilitator at any time with questions. I'm now going to be walking us through a few data-related tips for a successful energy action plan. I'm also going to be giving a few examples to demonstrate how a community used these tips in creating their successful plan. For these examples, I will be talking about Winona, Minnesota, a small town on the banks of the Mississippi River. Many other partners in energy communities have also successfully used these tips as well. So Xcel Energy will provide energy use data for your community, but it's ultimately up to you, the energy action team member, who has knowledge of your community to determine what those data mean for your plan. So that's why the first tip here is to use qualitative and quantitative data when assessing your community. As an energy action team member, the knowledge of your community that you are able to bring to the table will be vital to the success of your plan. This may be knowledge of new developments going in, or conversations you've had with local business owners or your neighbors about energy. Each community is unique. Your community facilitators are also able to provide non-energy specific data, including census, housing, or demographics data as available for your community. I also wanted to include this as the first tip because it applies throughout all the other tips and discussions we'll have today about your energy action planning process. The energy data we provide will drive much of the planning, but it is your community input that will ultimately contribute to the success. It's the knowledge that the team brings to the table that defines where those energy opportunities are and how to create successful strategies to get there. So how has it panned out in the community? In Winona, some of the data that Xcel Energy provided to the community outlines some relatively low participation in certain programs that can be targeted towards small business. This was identified in the data that was shown in the planning process. On its own, this may not have specifically identified an energy opportunity or opportunities for savings. But in Winona, energy action team members were able to talk in depth about their vibrant, small business-filled historic downtown. Energy action team members knew that small business owners who had very little free time to think about energy efficiency and were still using old incandescent lights. Bringing together the utility data and community knowledge led to a robust section of the Energy Action Plan dedicated to strategies around small business outreach. The second tip we have found helpful is to analyze your energy footprint based on your community's composition and needs. Every community is different, and you know yours best. Is your community mostly residential? Then perhaps that should be the focus of your plan. Does your community have a large number of small manufacturing facilities? If so, perhaps it would be best to spend planning time to establish strategies to engage that sector. Figuring out what your focus areas are and honing in on your target audiences from there help set up your community for success and allow you to create more targeted messages and strategies. Winona is a small college town that also has a history of manufacturing and a historic downtown area that we talked briefly about before, filled with small, locally owned shops. Ultimately, their Energy Action team took a look at the community as a whole and identified 4 distinct focus areas, as well as strategies surrounding each. So these were residential energy, which was broken out here, as well as institutions, including the college, the city, the county, large commercial and industrial users, and small and medium businesses. Ultimately, in Winona, they decided on 4 focus areas. Ultimately, many communities may find it easier to have fewer focus areas, but it is important to make sure that your actions are very targeted once you dive into these focus areas. So if you're hoping to save energy in your community, utility energy programs are the avenue to do that. Your community lead can advise on program specifics, and so some programs have certain eligibility requirements or are better suited to certain sectors of businesses. For example, Xcel Energy's commercial refrigeration efficiency program can be a really great option for savings in small businesses, but industrial customers probably wouldn't qualify for the program. Overall, look for the bang for your buck. Look for utility energy conservation programs that are relevant to your focus areas, that historically have both high energy savings and high participation rates in your state. So you should ask your community facilitator if you have questions about these, but here are some other tips that we have along those lines. For residents in both Minnesota and Colorado, the Home Energy Squad program is often seen as a good starting point for energy actions. Most visits here include recommended next steps for energy savings, as well as savings from direct installations of things such as light bulbs. For commercial customers in both Minnesota and Colorado, the programs differ some based on what types of customers make up communities, but in both states, it's often best to start with an energy audit. From there, programs such as lighting efficiency, small business lighting, and commercial refrigeration efficiency may lead to large energy savings. In Winona, this opportunity came on the residential level in the form of Home Energy Squad that we mentioned on the past slide. This program is typically quite popular for Xcel Energy and CenterPoint Energy customers in Minnesota. But in Winona, only 31 households had ever participated in the program. So there are a few reasons for this low participation that the community and the community facilitators were able to identify. For example, Home Energy Squad had only just begun offering its services to the Winona area, and historically they had not been able to send crews into some of the areas of greater Minnesota. Home Energy Squad is also only available to Winona residents during warmer months, spring, summer, and fall, because there are limited transportation options to get to Winona in winter months when the roads may be more slippery. Home Energy Squad Home Energy Squad is a program that not only has direct savings, but can also lead to greater savings because most visits provide recommendations as to the next steps. And you can ask your community facilitator if you have more questions about this service. So the fourth tip we have for creating an energy action plan is that when creating your plan, creating a visionary long-term goals can be helpful in communicating your plan to the community, but it's also important to remember to keep the action in your energy action plan. Establishing some near-term goals, often around program participation and engagement, can help to build momentum and confidence. Plus, even short-term goals can contribute towards those longer ones. In the city of Winona, their energy action plan established an overarching goal to achieve carbon neutrality by the year 2050. In addition to that, they set annual goals for participation in energy savings. For residents, the goal is to double annual participation in conservation programs. I will talk a little bit more about implementation tracking in a moment, but for Winona, they've already seen some great gains in their goals in the residential area, which has helped to build confidence and momentum among team members. So after you create your community's energy action plan, you're going to implement it. Your community facilitators can provide more details of what data for community might look like, but here's an example from Winona. Winona began implementation in late 2017, and as you can see, it doesn't yet have full data for full year of 2018, but we do expect participation to continue to grow. The City of Winona worked diligently to implement strategies laid out by its Energy Action Plan to achieve the success that it did. And this so far has included more than 17 times the program participation in Low-Income Home Energy Squad in 2017 as compared to 2016, as well as increasing participation in other programs as well. Business outreach to Winona's downtown and other areas also included participation of over 80 businesses signing up for Energy Smart, an energy audit program run and offered by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce that provides no-cost energy assessments to businesses. So during implementation, your community can expect to see biannual data reports to track and measure progress from Xcel Energy. We also encourage communities to track progress in items they're working on their own. Just as the data provided in planning is most helpful when supplemented by community knowledge, utility energy data only tells part of the story. The data that the community may track may include businesses or residents contacted, clicks on social media posts, or just great testimonials and stories from your community members.
Thank you for watching Using Community Data for Plan Development and Implementation. We hope that as you participate in Partners in Energy, you now have an understanding of how data is gathered and used for your community, and understand why it is important to use community information and data as part of developing your energy action plan, and that you are familiar with Partners in Energy data analytics capabilities and process, and are prepared to effectively participate and analyze your community's energy data in planning and implementation. If you have any questions, please reach out directly to your community lead.